people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
To the mother relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of her contract extension with the people over there at Sky Sports and Boxer, unbeaten up-and-comer Caroline Dubois said, I want to be fighting for world titles against the likes of Dixon, Beatrice Ferreira, and Katie Taylor.
Then why'd you re-sign to Boxer?
Caroline Dubois targets 3 fighters that are with Matchroom as she announces her re-signing with Boxer.
She's not getting Katie Taylor. She's not on Katie's radar.
So that's out. You figure that if she would have signed with Matchroom, she would have brought herself closer to at least 2 out of the 3. 2 out of the 3 of those fights. But she decided to stick with Boxer, stick with Sky Sports.
What effect is that going to have?
I'm not proposing that Caroline Dubois be deprived of those fights on the premise that she didn't sign to Matchroom. I'm not proposing that side of the street politics.
I'm not saying that they should freeze her out.
But her staying at Boxer, it does make the situation a bit more complicated. Let's not kid ourselves. She's used to the red carpet treatment. She's used to that. But you're not the A-side to any of those fighters. You're not.
Nope.
Not yet. She's not the A-side to Dixon. She's not even the A-side to Beatrice Ferreira because those fighters are champions now.
You're not.
What do you have that they might want? What do you have that they might need? It's a legitimate question because you're on one side of the street and they're on another. So why would they be looking in your direction? You seem to be the one that's looking at theirs. For over a year now, Caroline Dubois has expressed an interest in facing Dixon. This started before Rhiannon became WBO champion. Caroline has been saying that she wants to fight her. Now, she doesn't keep that same energy for Beatrice Ferreira, though all the same, you're the one looking over there. The Dixon people are going to ask themselves, why should we fight Caroline? We've got a belt. She doesn't. We're about to fight a somebody in Terry Harper. Terry is an established name. People know Terry. Who's she fighting? Mayra Moneo.
Who's that?
For an interim title. What do we need from Caroline Dubois? This is what the Dixon people are going to ask themselves. Now, Beatrice Ferreira, Brazil's own Beatrice Ferreira, she might be more receptive to a Caroline Dubois fight. She might be. So much so, they might be willing to send her over. Send her to Boxer.
She might be willing to go, but who says that Boxer wants her to? Who says that Boxer wants to make Dubois versus Ferreira?
Put their prize stallion in harm's way against a fighter that comes from the same kind of amateur background that Caroline does, just as lethal as a professional. Frankly, I don't think that Boxer wants to make that fight. I don't think Caroline wants it either. I think she's waiting for Beatrice to get a bit older, a bit slower.
This complicates things.
That she decided to stay with Boxer and didn't decide to go with Matchroom. I'm not saying she had to go with Matchroom. I'm just saying it would have brought her closer to the fights that she wanted.
The one fight that she can have, the Ferreira fight.
She doesn't want that fight. And I don't think that Boxer is more capable of promoting Caroline Dubois and turning her into an attraction, a star, than Matchroom is. I don't. Matchroom is the reason that we've seen this influx of women fighters in the British boxing scene. That has everything to do with them, how they've promoted Katie Taylor, Terry Harper, Shannon Courtenay, Ebony Bridges, Savannah Marshall before she crossed over to Boxer, Chantel Cameron before she crossed over to Queensbury. That Matchroom laid the foundations and spearheaded the effort for women boxers and women's boxing, and if the sport is in a better place now than it was in previous years, it has everything to do with them. The fighters they've promoted and the shows that they've put on. That they are more adept to the task.
More than Boxer.
Boxers got Caroline Dubois, they've got Lauren Price, they've got Karis Ardingstall, but who's more talked about?
Who?
Them or Sky Nicholson?
Sky, and it's not even close.
Boxers got 1 or 2 Olympians, they do, but they don't get talked about as much as Matchroom's Valkyries, Matchroom's girls, because Matchroom are better at promoting those fighters.
They are.
Those fights.
It's not just, well, you should have signed the Matchroom so you could get a Dixon fight or a Ferreira fight. It's not just that. It's that one promotional outfit is better at their job than the other. They put on more shows in more markets across the world.
In the United Kingdom, in the United States, in Australia,
In Saudi.
in Mexico, it's not just about 1 or 2 fights that you could have had if you went to Matchroom. It's that Matchroom is better at their job than Boxer is.
Buddy, you wanted to stay over there? You stay over there.
I'm not proposing that they freeze her out, but because she stayed over there, it's gonna play out a certain way.
All the belts are at Matchroom.
Rhiannon has 1, Beatrice has another, and Katie Taylor's got the rest.
Make of that what you will.
Men's lightweight news, it appears that Gervonta Davis has been granted permission to travel to Paris while on probation after being invited by Team USA to support and advise their boxers during the Olympics. Tank will be in France from July 19th to August 12th. It wasn't looking good there for Tank's trip to Paris, as Judge Althea described his attorney and this request as arrogant. Her words, not mine.
She said his attorney was arrogant, that he was trying to intimidate her. That's what the reports stated at the time, and it wasn't looking good.
Now, this is the same judge that ordered Gervonta to serve out the remainder of his sentence in a cell instead of on house arrest because he requested he serve it out in a 4-star hotel.
It's the same judge.
She seems to have softened her stance and allowed him some leniency to go visit the U.S. Olympic team ahead of the Olympics, though I don't know why, as Gervonta is not an Olympian himself, nor has he ever been.
He's not exactly Mark Twain either.
That he should go speak to this crop of Olympians ahead of what is the biggest moment in their amateur careers. One would have thought that they would have got Clarissa Shields, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, to go meet and speak with the Olympic team, or maybe Marcus Brown. He was an Olympian.
O'Shea Jones?
If the goal here is to provide some tips and tricks and insights for the stage that these young fighters, these amateurs, are about to fight on, then you need an Olympic boxer to do that. Gervonta don't know nothing about that. Yeah, he's got some amateur experience, but he didn't go to the Olympics.
What the hell insights can he provide them?
And have you heard this guy talk? Like I said, he's not exactly Mark Twain, this one. That he should be the one that flies out to Paris to talk to these youngsters. It doesn't make a ton of sense.
Rumors abound.
So I have it on very good authority from a reliable source that the negotiations between Vasyl Lomachenko and Gervonta Davis has hit a snag.
What?
That the Gervonta Davis people are requesting a guaranteed purse of about $40 million. $40 million up front.
Just what I was told.
Don't shoot the messenger.
It's just what I was told.
On the predication that that bit of intel checks out, and what the Gervonta Davis people are looking for from this fight is a $40 million guaranteed purse. $40 million up front. That's too much. That's way too much.
What do you mean it's too much? This guy sold over 1 million pay-per-views with Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, but this guy he's fighting ain't Ryan Garcia. You can think the world of Vasyl Lomachenko's boxing and his movement and his accolades as an amateur and as a professional, but as a draw, he's not as big a draw as Ryan Garcia. So you can't act and price the fight as if Gervonta's fighting Ryan Garcia. This is not Ryan Garcia. And Gervonta, he didn't do with Ryan in his last fight what he did with Frank Martin.
Did you forget?
The numbers for the Frank Martin fight are anywhere in between 150 to 350,000 pay-per-view buys. What they're not is over 1 million, like what he did with Ryan, or even 500,000. So on that premise, if this is true, and the Gervonta Davis people are looking for $40 million up front, $40 million guaranteed, that's too much. That's way too much.
Break it down.
So just to generate $40 million, this is just to generate $40 million at the box office, you would have to sell 500,000 pay-per-views at a price point of $80. That generates $40 million. But if that's what Gervonta Davis wants up front, what's that saying? That The production crew that films the fight, I guess they're working for free.
Yeah.
And I guess all the undercard fighters, they must be fighting for free. So Lomachenko, he must not be getting anything up front.
Yeah.
No guarantees. No guarantees for nobody. No money for the operational costs. Because if you have to give Gervonta $40 million up front just to do the fight,
The operational costs for the show would be through the roof.
and you have to assume that both ESPN and Amazon Prime, they're going to want a piece of the action. They're going to want to cut
The promotion.
whatever you have to spend in order to promote the show, promote the fight in the coming months. That falls under operational costs too, that if one of these fighters actually expects to get paid $40 million up front, you're making the fight too risky to put on.
Based on what you want and whatever Vasyl Lomachenko might want, up front, guaranteed. Well, that would make the show too risky to put on. The break-even point would be too hard to hit.
Why?
Well, for Gervonta to get $40 million up front and for you to be able to cover that, you'd have to sell 500,000 pay-per-view buys and in excess of 500,000 to pay everybody else. And I don't think this pay-per-view does more than that. I'd put the ballpark figure for what this fight does at the box office at or around 400 to 500,000 pay-per-view buys, conservatively.
There's nothing in the numbers, the metrics that would suggest that this show is going to do over 1 million pay-per-view buys. It's a good show. It's a good-sized show.
But not 1 million pay-per-view buys good.
Vasyl Lomachenko is not Ryan Garcia. He does not appeal to a casual audience like Ryan Garcia. So you can't treat this set of negotiations like it was that one.
Like you're gonna do with this fight what you did with that one.
You're not.
So in a situation where the projected sales for the pay-per-view are in the neighborhood of around 500,000, you would guarantee the fighters more nominal guarantees in the neighborhood of, say, 5 to 10 million, and let them make the rest of their money from the upside of the pay-per-view. Other operational costs to account for, and the break-even point is that much easier to hit when the show isn't that expensive to put on. But if what you want is 40 million...
What's the break-even point again?
Break-even point is the point where you've generated enough money that you get back what you put in, what you spent to do the show.
All the operational costs are covered. But if that's what it's going to cost you just to do the show, operational costs are astronomical. Thus, you'd have to sell an astronomical amount of pay-per-views just to cover it. The risk of this pay-per-view becoming a categorical flop is that much higher. So in the event that this intel checks out, and that's what Team Davis wanted, 40 million guaranteed, that's too much.
You priced yourself out.
Which isn't hard to believe, because isn't this the same guy who asked Turki Al-Sheikh for 2 Lamborghinis just to discuss fighting Devin Haney? Didn't that happen, and isn't that what he asked for?
He was asking for too much then, so it's entirely possible he's asking for too much now.
To think that because you sold some pay-per-views with Ryan Garcia, you go to ESPN, which pockets turned out, asking for the moon and the stars because of what you did with Ryan. This ain't Ryan.
Why didn't you do that with Frank?
Just a rumor. It should be treated as such. We'll see if it checks out. If things fall apart between the two teams, we'll have a good idea why.
And if they don't, and the fight goes through, then we can consider that good news.
They made the fight. Finally, in men's junior middleweight news, Eddie Hearn says 154 pounds is a step too far for Terence Crawford.
Eddie Hearn, who promotes Israel Madrimov, Israel, who trains alongside Dmitry Bivol. Dmitry, another one of Eddie Hearn's fighters, he was part of a big upset when he fought Canelo and beat him. Is Israel about to do that to Terence?
Promoter Eddie Hearn has doubts that the brilliance of Terence Crawford, already a 3-weight champion, will transfer to junior middleweight, where he challenges WBA boss Israel Madrimov on August 3rd. Crawford, 40-0 with 31 KOs, is widely considered to be the pound-for-pound best fighter in the sport today. He won his first title down at lightweight against Ricky Burns back in 2014, and since then has gone on to conquer the junior welterweight and welterweight divisions, becoming undisputed in both. Now Crawford, 36, is aiming to win a belt in a 4th division when he takes on Madrimov.
Now, some part of this is just Eddie Hearn promoting his fighter and backing his man.
Doing his job, essentially. He's just doing his job, and and selling the fight. But there are legitimate concerns in association with this match, because Terence Crawford will not have fought in over a year's time. He's going to a new weight, and he's fighting a very formidable fighter, more formidable than some are giving Israel credit for. This is a well-schooled amateur, a naturally bigger and younger guy than Terence.
Some people have the nerve to call it a cherry pick.
Terence Crawford's first ever victory as a world champion was on my show in Glasgow against Ricky Burns. It was at 135. Hearn, speaking as Madrimov's promoter, told Matchroom Boxing he won a world championship there. He moved to 140 and beat another one of our fighters there to become undisputed at 140. He moved to 147 and became undisputed at 147. And now he's moving to 154. Sooner or later, it's too much.
That's how it happened for Chocolatito. It wasn't till he got to his fourth division, his fourth weight class, that Chocolatito, then a whirlwind, started to look a little bit more human, and that is where he suffered his first professional loss, got knocked out by Sorung Visai. Could that happen to Terence Crawford now that he's at his fourth weight? Although Hearn accepts his fighter is the underdog going into the contest because of Crawford's past achievements, he believes that the size and power of the Uzbek fighter will be the deciding factor. I think when you're fighting someone who is a big 154-pounder with huge power, that is when you're going to get found out, Hearn continued. Madrimov is the underdog going into this fight, but I think this is the toughest fight of Terence Crawford's career so far. Crawford will already go down as a great, but at some point when you move through the divisions, one of those steps is just one step too far. Well, for a fighter who means to fight Canelo Alvarez at an even higher weight, 168, the least you can do is prove that you can handle yourself at 154 against a guy who's only got something like 10 or 11 fights.
That if you think you have what it takes to beat Canelo, prove you can beat this guy first. It's an even contest between Israel Madrimov's lack of experience, that he's nowhere near as experienced as a professional as Terence Crawford, but he is younger and naturally bigger. It creates an even playing field where both guys go into it with something working for them.
Israel has youth and freshness, size,
where Terence Crawford has experience and know-how, the kind that Israel doesn't have. The reason I like Crawford to win the fight, in spite of his age and that he's moving up in weight, is that he takes care of himself in between fights, that he doesn't balloon in weight. He might actually feel invigorated, better, not having to boil down to 147. Fighting at 154 may be a breath of fresh air, as well as his stopping power. I think it's going to carry. So far, Terence Crawford stopped every single guy they put in front of him at 147. I think that power's going to carry up to 154.
What about Israel's size?
Well, he's a beefier guy than Terence Crawford, though not much taller than Terence or longer. Terence, in fact, has dealt with taller, longer fighters already than Israel Madrimov. Postal was taller and longer than he was.
Julius Longdongo was taller and longer.
Jose Benavidez was taller and longer. So in terms of being able to manage the distance, I think he'll be able to.
Be all right.
Terence is a notoriously slow starter. Takes him 2 or 3 rounds to get into a groove before he moves in. So he might look a little human in those first 2 to 3 rounds.
Last thoughts.
It would be a mistake to look at this fight as a walk in the park or some kind of cherry pick for Terence. This is no cherry. Moving up in weight and fighting this guy, it is dangerous, but Terence is no ordinary fighter.
Even though there are intangibles and this is uncharted territory, I have faith that he can get the job done.
I think Terence is going to stop this guy.
He's going to knock him out.